The feeling of exploring a new place can be so well executed it overcomes the need for specific goals. Today on GameRanks, we bring you the top 10 exploration games of 2016. Just as a real quick acknowledgement, we didn't bring in the normal action RPG open world things like Witcher, or Skyrim for that matter. Not that we don't like those games, not that we don't think those games are amazing. And while they most certainly can be called exploration games, the list that we're bringing you today just emphasizes exploration a bit more than those games, and we feel like they could use a highlight. Number 10 is Abzu, which I would call a spiritual successor to Journey on account it was made by the art director of Journey. It's a very linear game, to be fair, but the environments are made for exploration. The designers clearly want you to spend some time. You can rush through it and beat the game in an hour, but it's so much more satisfying not to. Now that being said, yes, it is an hour-long game if you take the linear path through it, but this is one of those games that if you just stop, look around, investigate, that's kind of the point. The game is beautiful, I mean seriously beautiful. It is every bit an heir to Journey's throne. Actually does have a very nice story, but I think probably the best aspect of it, and this is saying a lot, is the music. Wow. As far as the actual canon experience goes, being an hour long makes the $20 price tag a little bit high, but I found it worth it. Number 9, Subterranean, which kind of owes a lot to the early 90s Alien Breed. It's a top-down roguelike that places you in an underground city on Mars, behest of a disaster, and in some ways does a lot to remind me of System Shock. There's a lot of resource gathering and management, but there's also an actual sort of reason for all of it. They do a good job of motivating you throughout the game, although sometimes it's a little bit overly hard, I think, especially for players new to the genre. Not that the combat or anything is outstandingly difficult, it's just you have to repair these damn guns so much in this game. It's a little bit excessive, but that being said, it's pretty interesting how very much they took the sort of 90s style graphics and expanded on it. It really feels like one of those games to me, but it obviously looks significantly nicer. I love the setting, probably more than I love anything else about the game, and being the game is well crafted, pretty, and enjoyable, that's high praise. Number 8 is Crashlands. What's billed as a story-driven crafting RPG overflowing with sass, yes, that's the actual marketing line, brings you a very humorous exploration RPG that spans 3 continents. It's huge. The world in which this game takes place is massive, and you have got a lot of ground to cover. It brings in a base building element, a tameable creature element, and a whole lot of inventory management elements. The only kind of weak point is the combat, which is not exactly revolutionary, but I would call it good enough. Sometimes the balance is kind of weird, but beyond that, the game really shines in pretty much every situation other than combat. Combat can get a bit grindy, but in all honesty, that's a small price to pay for such a well-made game. Number 7 is Overfall, which is a game of diplomacy and exploration. This is one of the more interesting games on account it's never the same twice. The idea is to continually learn the histories of various lost souls. You also recruit them. It comes up as a little bit of a roguelike, but it's not a really massively deep dungeon crawly game or anything like that. It's more of a turn-based, see the world type experience. In theory, you could probably play this game forever. It's very replayable and the world is randomly generated. It doesn't ever get too heavy, but when it plays at the more interesting aspects of it, including the mundane type things, the elements of diplomacy and the less action-oriented segments, this is a unique game. Number 6, The Solus Project, which is a single-player exploration adventure that incorporates some survival elements as well. Something I'll have to say is that this kind of reminds me, as far as look-wise goes, of No Man's Sky, but it is nothing like No Man's Sky. Remember, this is a list of the best exploration games. They do a great job with creating a world that sort of emanates a familiarity, but also an alienation that makes it feel foreign. It does a great job of progressing the story through environmental storytelling. It starts off very straightforward and eventually evolves into something a little bit more unsettling. Puzzles integrate very well with the rest of the game. They don't ever come off as tacked on or forced into the gameplay, and you're looking at footage of it. It's very clearly a beautiful game. If you want to go through the story, it's about 10-15 hours, but if you want to explore the world, you could really take much longer if you wanted, I think. This is one of those games that shows off the potential of environmental storytelling and integrates it with an exploration element that makes makes it seriously an incredible game. Number 5, The Witness is a puzzle-based, kind of Myst-feeling game to me, but essentially is an open-world puzzle game. Obviously, there's a lot of exploration element. Essentially, the entirety of the game is exploration and puzzle solving. It's a beautiful game, might I add, that has a rich, detailed color palette that simultaneously feels real and cartoony at once. The Witness's one weakness is probably the story, but it's not exactly the most important part of the game. You could essentially play it as an open-world puzzle game, and that's that. Really, just seeing the entirety of the island is worth the game alone, but the puzzles are actually a lot of fun. Number 4 is Abduction. And where The Witness is kind of like Myst, Abduction is the actual definite spiritual successor to Myst, made by the people who originally made Myst. This retains a much more mysterious feel than The Witness does, that makes you feel very much like it is a Myst game, or Riven for that matter. The other thing that's quite nice about this compared to Myst is that the exploration is a little bit less linear. If you're not really that familiar with Myst, I would also recommend this to fans of the Talos Principle, as kind of really that type of a game. And it also shows you that the original developers of Myst, Cyan, are really kind of the forebearers of this genre. Number 3, The Curious Expedition is a game that kind of comes off as a take on a retro expedition style game that has today's resources. Certainly attempts at this type of a game have been done throughout the years, but this is kind of the one that's finally done it, in my opinion at least. The exploration elements, the various personalities you get to interact with, the graphics, the battles, really it all kind of bubbles up into this full package that I don't really know if has been done in this style. I certainly can't remember a game that is this good attempting to do what this game does. Number 2, Starbound is a sandbox adventure game not unlike Terraria, but that doesn't take place on a planet that you're aware of. It's extraterrestrial and it really feels interesting. This is a game that can take you so far past what Terraria can offer. I would say it also handles a little bit better than Terraria as well. It has the benefit of not being the first product in that genre, obviously, but there's just something to this that feels like more than Terraria to me. I enjoy this game a lot, and frankly, you can literally spend an endless amount of time in it. There's a huge variation in the amount of types of gameplay you can have, and I would say this is one of those games that lives up to the potential of an idea somebody else had. Not necessarily the most original thing you've ever seen, but it's certainly the best example of this I've ever seen. And finally, number 1, World of Warcraft Legion, which is an expansion that essentially overhauls World of Warcraft. It reworks so many of the different classes, upgrades the graphics, and adds several new zones that sort of rework some of the best ideas from previous expansions. I wouldn't call them derivative, but you can tell they continually learn when they make new expansions. The story is really enjoyable, okay? Probably more enjoyable than any other World of Warcraft story, in my opinion. This is probably the best expansion of it. Maybe the one small gripe that I have is that a lot of the quests are just fetch quests, but in all honesty, everything else kind of comes together to sort of make that, I would say, irrelevant. What's your favorite exploration game of the year? Let's hear that in the comments, along with anything else you might want to add about these games. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, and if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day. The best way to see them first is a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon, you can follow me on Twitter, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.